So back in 1966, a couple of researchers at Stanford asked this really fundamental question, something that gets right to the heart of how we interact with each other. How do you get someone to do something they'd probably rather not do? And their answer? It wasn't about force, it wasn't about pressure, no, it was something way more subtle. And it's a technique that, believe me, is used on all of us every single day.
I mean, really think about that for a second. We're not talking about a small favor here. We're talking about something huge, something inconvenient, something that might even be, well, pretty weird. So how do you do it? Do you just keep applying more and more pressure? Or is there another way, a smarter, more psychological way to get to that yes?
You've basically got two paths, right? There's the obvious one. You persuade, you offer a reward, you just apply a ton of social pressure. But these researchers, Jonathan Freedman and Scott Fraser, they were looking for something else. They were looking for a psychological key, a little nudge that could unlock a yes without the person even really knowing why they're agreeing.
And they had a hunch. It was based on an idea you've probably heard a million times. You know that old saying, just get your foot in the door? The idea that if you can just get that little bit of access, the rest becomes way, way easier. They wanted to prove this wasn't just some old wives' tale, but a real, testable, psychological phenomenon.
So here it is. Here's the core of the idea in a nutshell. It's really a two-step move. See, you don't start with what you really want. You start with something small, something almost trivial. Because getting that first little yes, well, that's the thing that changes everything that follows.
Let's just walk through it. First, you make a tiny ask. Something so easy it's almost harder to say no than yes. Boom, you get compliance. Then, a little later, you come back with the real request, the big one. And the theory is, your odds of getting a yes have just shot up dramatically. Okay, so to put this to the test, the researchers came up with this really clever experiment out in the real world. They focused on a specific group of people at the time, about 156 housewives living in Palo Alto, California. Now, these researchers were about to make a truly wild request, but for one group of them, they were going to try to get their foot in the door first. And this was it. This was the foot in the door. An experimenter, claiming to be from this made-up California consumers group, called one set of women and made this tiny, harmless-sounding request. Hey, would you mind answering just a couple of quick questions about the soaps you use at home? I mean, pretty easy to agree to, right? Okay, so 3 days later, the same guy calls back, but this time he comes with the real ask. He asks if a team of 5 or 6 men could come into her house for 2 hours and have, quote, full freedom to go through all her cupboards and closets to catalog all her household products. I mean, can you imagine? That is a huge, incredibly invasive request.
And the results were just incredible. Take a look at the control group over on the left. These are the women who only got that one big out-of-the-blue request. Only about 1 in 5 agreed. But the group on the right, the ones who had first said yes to that simple little soap survey, more than half of them agreed to let a team of strange men search their entire house. That one tiny yes to a simple question more than doubled their compliance for the massive request. It worked.
And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? We know the technique is effective, but why? What is actually happening in someone's brain? Why does agreeing to something small and insignificant make you so much more likely to agree to something gigantic and kind of crazy later on? What's the secret ingredient here?
To figure that out, the researchers designed a second experiment, and this one I think was even more elegant. This time their goal was to pinpoint the why. Was it about the topic? Was it about the type of action you were asked to do? They were determined to find out. So for this experiment, the big request was asking homeowners to put this huge, and let's be honest, pretty ugly sign on their front lawn. You can see from the photo they actually showed people, it was deliberately made to look bad. It was big, it covered up the house. It's no surprise that in the control group, less than 20% of people said yes. Now here comes the brilliant part. Weeks earlier, they had approached different groups with different small requests. So one group was asked to put a tiny 3-inch "Be a Safe Driver" sign in their window. That's the same issue, safe driving, and the same task, displaying a sign. Another group was asked to sign a petition for safe driving. So same issue, but a different task. And a third group was asked to put up a small sign about keeping California beautiful. So a different issue, but the same task. See how they isolated the variables? It's genius. And this is where the whole secret is just laid bare. Look at this result. For the group where the small request was a perfect match for the big one, same issue, same task, the compliance rate went through the absolute roof. It jumped from under 17% all the way up to 76%. This proves it wasn't just about being a generally helpful person. Something much, much deeper was going on here. That tiny little initial agreement completely changed the game.
So what did that second experiment really prove? It showed us that the effect isn't just about liking the person who's asking, and it's not just being committed to one specific action. No, it's about something much more profound happening inside your own head.
And you know what? The researchers themselves summed it up perfectly. They said it creates a change in the person's feelings about getting involved. You become, in your own eyes, the kind of person who does this sort of thing.
So here's the real magic, the psychology behind it all. When you agree to put that tiny safe driver sign in your window, you're not just doing a thing. You're subconsciously telling yourself a story. Hey, I'm the kind of person who cares about public safety. So then 2 weeks later, when you're asked to put up the big sign, saying no would create a conflict with this new identity you formed. You say yes to stay consistent with the person you now believe you are. And look, this is not just some quirky little finding from a dusty old paper from the 1960s. Once you see this pattern, I promise you are going to start noticing it everywhere. It's one of the most fundamental tools of persuasion in the modern world. Just think about it for a second. Have you ever signed a quick online petition, and then bam, the very next page is asking you for a donation? That's foot in the door. By signing, you've already said, I'm a person who cares about this. Or how about that no-commitment free trial for a streaming service? They know that once you start using it, you start to see yourself as a user, which makes it way harder to say no when it's time to subscribe. This whole small yes to big yes pipeline is everywhere.
You know, understanding this technique, it's kind of like having a superpower. On one hand, it can help you become more persuasive for the things you care about. But on the other, it acts like a shield. It helps you recognize when your own self-image is being subtly shaped by someone else. So the real question is, now that you know the secret, what are you going to do with that knowledge?